This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system.
Are your SOPs tied directly to your cultivation plans? Can you easily manage your inventory and workforce and vendors from a single system? If you said no to this, then you need to stop what you're doing and call the team at Regrow. Regrow is built to automate tasks, reduce costs, and avoid shortages by creating dynamic workflows that maximize yields and increase profitability for your cannabis business. Think of Regrow as the single pane of glass view into your entire supply chain. If you're a cannabis company searching for a strategic business partner to help you automate your business, scale effectively, and make the supply chain work for you, then you've got to talk to the team at Regrow. Visit their website at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Rena Sherbill. She's the host of the Cannabis Investing podcast. All right, we are recording. Yeah, so you mentioned storm. You guys have a storm in Israel. What's going on there?
We're in the midst of a storm. It's been like a hailstorm. I know up north it was much bigger, and maybe down south in Tel Aviv they were like, yeah, maybe this big. Yeah, it's just like our apartments are not made for this kind of 2021 type of weather.
Right.
We're desert apartments. So we're not made for, like, I remember it rained once so much, like my windows just, they'd had enough. So it's just your average storm for many places in America. It's not exciting at all. But
it's just happening everywhere and to your point of like the infrastructure not being prepared for that type of weather, like Texas is getting pummeled right now. I'm in Dallas, and for the past like 3 days, it's been anywhere. The low has been like 1 degree to like the high of 9. And I'm talking, like ice on the roads. There was 100-car pileup in Fort Worth. Unfortunately, some people even lost their lives. Like, and the power's been out for almost 48 hours now.
That was happening here too. My partner's parents' place went out last night. Yeah, it's happening here too. I didn't know that was happening in Texas. How fortuitous that I spoke of the weather. Sorry you guys are going through that. And to put it in perspective, we're talking those numbers too, but in Celsius. So
right. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, even last night, like, so it's because it's kind of a funny story. My wife and I, we're getting low on food, right? So we usually do Instacart, and obviously all the delivery services were out, and so even all the stores, grocery stores were closed. And there was one of the grocery stores nearby had like a window when they were open. So we had like 30 minutes. I recorded 2 podcasts. I was done. And so like we ran over there to get food. And Rena, the entire place, first off, it was packed. Nothing. Like it was like deja vu from the pandemic, only like it wasn't just toilet paper. It was everything: meats, produce, breads, eggs, like everything was gone. Luckily we were able to get like little things of what we needed to make things work, but it was crazy. And I don't think it was the shopper's fault. I think it's a distribution problem, is what I've heard from some friends, is that
because like it was preventing the food from coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like they just can't get the trucks on the road fast enough. So so we talk about infrastructure.
Is this an ice? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like you talk about infrastructure, and there's probably Northeasterners that are like, man, Texans can't deal with a little snow, but like legit we can't. Like we don't have the salt and like all that kind of stuff to get by. So it's just been a wild ride, basically.
I hear you. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and I went to university in New York, and I remember people being like freaked out. And people from the Midwest be like, this is nothing. You guys don't even know. But it's like, if you're not prepared, you're not prepared. Like New York shuts down like at a certain point. And then like in Texas, I imagine it's even more so. So
yeah,
it's is this an ice storm? Is that what you guys are suffering from? A snowstorm?
they're calling it a winter storm. Just there's been snow, but of course the snow turns into ice, and it just makes
Right.
everything slick. So, but we've been fortunate to have power. Like I said, there's over 5 million people in the Dallas Metroplex that have been out. So, the fact that we can get on today and talk
Yeah,
is a
right.
good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being in, I went to, I think maybe I've spoken about this before, that how much I love the Greek islands. I don't know if I have spoken about this. I speak about it to many people, how much I love the Greek islands. And it's really close to Israel.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I was there and it was June and it was pouring rain. And I was just shocked. And I was saying, like, nobody was prepared in any kind of way. It was very shocking. And I asked somebody who had like lived there their whole life, and they're like, we don't have rain in June. This is insane. But now all the insanity is just de rigueur.
Right. Right. No, it's wild. All this weather, and like it's just been a whirlwind of all kinds of crazy different events that have just played out over the last, like, since 2020. Like,
Yeah,
and it's like everything's fair game now,
yeah, yeah.
Really
Have you
strange.
seen that 2021, like 2020 WON?
No, what's that?
It's like, because everybody was like so hopeful, like January 1st, 2021, the whole world is going to go back to pre-COVID state. And when that didn't happen, and not only did that not happen, but it seemed like maybe aside from Biden winning, like there was just like bad news after bad news. And for some people, that was also bad news. And so the hashtag was like 202, and instead of the one, it was WON, like 2021.
Oh, I get it. Like they won the battle or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's
yes.
so funny. It's so true, man. Like, I don't know. I still think we have a long way to go still,
Yeah,
with everything that's happening. But
certainly seems that way.
it seems like, the cannabis industry is continuing to gain that momentum. And man, we have a lot to talk about today. So, like, I forget, what did we cover last time? I know we talked about the stocks, MSOs, and the political momentum that we've seen with the Senate sweep, right?
Yeah. And I think like building a narrative in cannabis, I think is what we were talking about, and how these Canadian players, for a long time, and still for, if I may say, for the people that don't know, it's like a proxy for their cannabis, for the whole sector, when that just isn't really true. And really the growth, I think, as you and I see it, and as many formidable analysis see it,
Yeah.
coming from the States.
Yeah. And let's talk about that to start with, right? The MSOs versus the Canadian LPs.
Yeah.
And to your point, on Twitter, right? You got MSO gang. Like, I'm in that world, right? So we're talking about it every day. And what do you think? Like, is the understanding starting to shift a little more? Are people starting to like realize, oh, there's multi-state operators that are really performing well and have, cash on hand and all this stuff? Or is it still are we a long ways out from that awareness?
I don't think we're a long ways out. And I think, I mean, I see you on the Twitter fields. Like, I know that people and the Twitter fields understand it, and they're trying to spread the gospel and the education. And I think it's coming. I honestly feel like Alan Brockstein talks about this, and I would agree with him. I would say the mainstream financial press is like the most to blame. I don't think
Right.
they fully understand what's happening. They just see who has the most cash, who has the biggest market cap, and who has a deal with outside companies. Who's got the cash coming from Constellation? Who's got the cash coming from Altria? Oh, those are the players we should be looking at. But they don't have, I mean, Canopy does have, the quickest arm into the States when it does go federally legal. But until it goes federally legal, the multi-state operators, and I would add to that, in addition to the MSO gang, I do believe also in some single state operators. Most of them are not public, many of them are not publicly traded. But I feel like it seems that those are the companies, especially the companies at the top of the tiers, like your True Leaves and other ones that we've talked about on the show. I think they are really kind of the companies to beat, at least for the next couple of years. Beyond that, man, who knows what's going to happen.
Right, exactly, because that's when you're going to start to see acquisitions, consolidation, right?
Which we're
Right.
seeing. I think you're going to just see it even more.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to your point about the mainstream media and whatnot, like you're so right. And it's just so surprising because like Bloomberg, for instance, for all the technology and data and everything that they have, it's why are we continuing to talk about these Canadian companies? Right.
Yeah.
But they're slowly kind of being open. Like I saw Todd Harrison was it CNBC or Fox News recently,
Probably so.
Fox Business, and then you have, I think you have others, that are being interviewed at least by Bloomberg and some of these major networks. So the word's starting to spread. I mean, time will but definitely be the ultimate tell, but
Absolutely.
I'm waiting
Yeah,
for. I was just gonna say I'm waiting for Jim Cramer's analysis because he promised over the weekend that he was gonna deliver his analysis of blue chip cannabis stocks, but we haven't
I
heard it
know,
yet.
man. I don't
So.
even spend my time. I mean, when I'm far ahead of a professional, like, and considering I mean, I'm a professional of some kind, but I'm not a professional financial analyst. I just play one on TV. So I feel like if I'm so far ahead of that game, I don't even spend my time worrying about like what kind of laggards are saying now. I think actually that's like the sign where they say, it's time to sell when your cab driver is giving you stock tips. And I would say like it's time to sell cannabis when Jim Cramer comes out bullish on them. It's like the top of the market.
I'm just curious to see what he comes back with. I mean, what is
Yeah.
this? What is the homework? What do we? Let's see. Because we can help you out. You know.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. I mean, and that's what I feel like it's the theme, I would say, is of this 2020, 2021 debacle and the world changing and paradigm shifting. And so much of it is bad and hard and depressing. But then there's like the cannabis. And we started talking about this a little bit last time, like the blockchain and the AI and those things kind of changing things. And I would say the same thing about kind of like financial analysis being done on Twitter and on Seeking Alpha comment boards and on your podcast and on my podcast. And, not everything should be the gospel. But I think when you have aggregated content that the people are kind of upvoting and no voting and kind of voting with their voices and subscriptions and comments, I think that's how you democratize content. And that's how you get the real content and not just what some paid talking head is paid to talk about because they're connected to this and this and that.
Right.
So
I am so glad you brought that up because that's another thing that's happened since we talked last is the whole Reddit Wall Street bets thing, right? And you talk about this democratization of content and data and being able to have everyone has a microphone, right, with their phones. And what is incredible is we're literally living through that transition right now. Like we're living through the end of cannabis prohibition, which is incredible, right, in itself. And then now we're living through a time where we're understanding as just the average person who has a cell phone and has the tools to do it, like how to play how the big players have played for the long time. You know what I mean? Like that Wall Street bets was a perfect example of like exposing a vulnerability, right? Where that founder did of Wall Street Bets, and the army just kind of coalesced and got together, and it was pretty remarkable to see, pretty crazy. I'm still hanging on to my AMC, by the way.
are you good?
I'm holding strong. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think they showed the power of it and the limitations of it because
Right.
it got corrected by, Wall Street.
Oh,
And
don't even get me started on that. They stopped trading. How does that even happen?
exactly.
That was very a hard pill to swallow for me. But
Yeah, and these things are hard pills to swallow. It's like even cannabis legalization, there's so much great about it. And there's so much like, but there's also things that we still need to be paying attention to and headlines that are being, crossing our desks that we don't fully know the full machinations of it, like what's going on in Illinois, like Some of it seems good. Some of it is awful, like the social equity component of what's happening there. Like, so, but yet it's so exciting that cannabis is probably going to be legalized within this year. It's so exciting that these cannabis companies are doing well, and it is. But it's also, yeah, there's like a limit to everything, and we still need to be like very aware and awake and conscious. And you can't just like get in GameStop and hey, we beat the system. Let's ride this. Let's keep riding this. You know.
Right.
And I may add, I've just been reading these awful stories about like people that like young kids that don't know what it means to own a stock and seeing, you know, their balance like negative crazy numbers and thinking that that means that they owe that money. And so it's just education, education, education.
You nailed it on education, and that is that I want to talk about that. But to your point of like, you know, the uneducation of some people in entering the investing space, and by all means, I'm still learning. I've only been in the game like 2 years, you know what I mean? So but one person I saw was tweeting at Robinhood like, I can't purchase my stocks, like the trade won't go through, what's happening? And they finally had to write back like, markets are closed on the weekends, you know. So like so look, and I'm not calling that out like to hate on that person. I'm just saying you nailed it when you say education, right? Because that is what I was going to say. You nailed it. It's so important that we start to really focus on education, especially when it comes to the cannabis industry, because as we know, federal legalization is coming. And if we don't have enough ammo of education to back what we think would help the industry move forward in terms of policy and regulation, they're going to run the show, you know, and we need to disseminate that content to the public as well, so that we have an army to kind of, you know, march with together and
absolutely
in collaboration, you know.
Absolutely. And I feel like, you know, these podcasts are like a real essential part of building this community. And I feel like sharing it on social media, and it's not insignificant. I mean, look what it's doing, you know, like we're really, I feel like building something, and yeah, it's exciting to be a part of. And I think, you know, there's a responsibility there. And it's funny. I mean, education is really important. And also sometimes I think I suffer, maybe not as much anymore, but when I was getting started, from feeling like I wasn't educated enough to speak. But then I felt like what I was reading also wasn't educated enough to speak. And so I was feeling like, well, wait, maybe there is a place for me, not just to, you know, ask questions, but also to share my opinion. And as my opinion formed and became more educated, I think that helps. But I think it's always a dance, you know, in terms of like sharing our opinions and beliefs and putting stuff out there, and also being as informed as we possibly can.
Yeah, it's so true. It's a confidence thing, because I totally felt the same thing when I first started. And look, I, as well as everyone else in the industry, is learning every day more and more, right? Yeah. But you know, my scope and understanding of the science behind cannabis was very limited, right? But it just takes that kind of moment of, you know what, and being vulnerable and saying, I don't know it all, I'm curious, right? And if I can ask the right questions and kind of manage this conversation in a way that helps the audience understand and learn, then everyone wins, right? And I know that sounds like corny, but it's a win-win-win, right? Because I myself am educating myself. We're building relationships with industry experts in the industry, and the audience is listening and gaining something from it. But and it's great, but like you said, with that comes a lot of responsibility, and you know, we always got to keep that in mind in terms of not making any false claims or things like that, you know, trying to be as truthful as we can, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more.
So what is your experience like? Who have you been talking to lately? How has the narrative of, you know, the story of the cannabis industry growing in your perspective? You know, what's it look like? What's it been?
Well, it's interesting when you asked me that. What I was thinking of is, you know, somebody interesting that I was talking to, and I was saying this last time that I was about to talk to him, is Chris Naprawa, who is the president of Chiron, and he also is the president of Tal Blockchain Infrastructure. And I asked him, you know, how do you hire for these companies? Because who has a degree in blockchain? Who has, you know, like, who has a lot of experience in that? And he was saying exactly what you're saying in terms of like building the dialogue and building these podcasts and building our understanding is you have to have curiosity, you know, and you have to have people that are good under pressure and being able to pivot and navigate and be nimble. And I think that makes sense also for if you're really doing your due diligence on cannabis investing as well, and not just investing, but also what you're talking about, the plan. I mean, I've talked to, you know, doctors who were saying, you know, established, well-regarded doctors that had no idea what the endocannabinoid system was, you know,
Right.
until they learned about it. And it's like, why is that not taught in medical school? God knows, you know, it sure would benefit a lot of people. So it's just interesting. But in terms of who I've talked to lately that I found really interesting, well, we just did the SPAC week. We did SPAC week 2.
I listened to the most recent one. I got to listen to the Joe Crowder's one, but who was your recent guest? I forget his name. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Krista Muth, who is a Seeking Alpha author, and he also runs his own hedge fund dedicated to SPACs, was yesterday. And then today we had Michael Orbach, who we had on before. He's from the parent company. And then they had Subversive, which is called a REIT, but it's not a REIT. They just did a deal with Intercure in Israel, which is the biggest Israel player and the only profitable cannabis company outside of North America.
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting. I tweeted this. Michael was saying that he feels like Intercure in Israel today is like Trulieve in Florida in 2016.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So are they trading right now? Are they public?
They're right now on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and the deal that they just did with Subversive is they're about to be public on the NASDAQ once they finalize the deal, which should be happening sometime soon, which is, wow, I think, really exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I feel like lately I've been talking about, and honestly, like not on purpose, maybe because I'm based in Tel Aviv, so it was coming up for that, but all these similarities between, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, the similarities between the California culture and the Tel Aviv culture in terms of love and appreciation of cannabis. And I think that deal like really, really taps into that. They're bringing Cookies, the brand, to Israel. That exciting pharmacy I mentioned on the show. So it's cool. It's like, I think the legislation and the political machinations that are happening right now in this country are freaking me out. But I feel like there's some, I think, positive stuff ahead in terms of, I hope, cannabis legislation. I hope it supersedes the junk we have going on the other political fronts.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of like the political landscape in the U.S. is similar in that, of course, we have a new administration, we have the blue sweep, right? And for the first time, you know, you have a Senate Majority Leader who is talking about cannabis reform and potential legalization, right? And so, I mean, I know you saw it last week when that news went down, or I think it was 2 weeks ago now. I mean, the stocks were just booming, right?
Yeah.
It was crazy. And so I would expect that to happen again, because that those plans for that reform, the bill, basically they're going to basically combine certain existing bills together, and then they're going to present that. And I think that's like next week or in the coming weeks, we should hear about that.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I think it's definitely going to be that. Yeah, it's going to be exciting what happens. I'm really curious to see how, because there was this like surge, the rally, and then it kind of dipped back down, and then it's back up again. And I wonder, I'm curious to see how much volatility is still left to be shaken out. It seems to me like maybe not all that much. Like it seems to me like the strong have kind of gotten to this next tier, and maybe it'll, you know, fluctuate a little bit here and there, but I don't think we're going to see like Trulieve go from like 50 to back to 16, you know, like I don't think we're going to see like crazy fluctuations anymore. It seems to be balancing out. And I guess the thing, and I'm curious what you think about this, and if you're thinking about this or talking about this with people, is the notion of like what does happen when the US goes basically federally legal, or what it's going to look like and what it does to the US MSOs. And how legal is it going to be? Like, will other companies be able to come in from outside the sector? There's just so many unknowables. I think it's, talk about being curious, like, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm by no means an expert. And so this is just my personal opinion. I think that what would happen is first, we're going to see like reform. We're going to see probably safe banking go through and that tax provision 280E be removed. And the banking, obviously, what my recent guest, Rick Battenberg, the third said, this is a good point, is that when we talk about banking, he goes, it's not, I'm not talking about like the businesses actually being able to open up checking accounts and like whatnot and operate now. He said that's great, but it's the commercial side of it, like banks being able to publicly invest into these companies now and whatnot, you know. um and I'm probably butchering the way he said it, but he's like, that's where it's going to be crazy insane, right? And then not to mention that these MSOs will be able to list on the NASDAQ exchange,
Right.
which, and then talk about, you know, online trading platforms like Robinhood, including, right, you know, these MSOs. So it's going to explode. It's going to be crazy at that point. And so I think that this time is very crucial. There's a window right now before that, you know, that those bills are presented and then before it's, you know, passed or even voted on. So now is a crucial time, I think, to get in.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the uplisting, I agree. I think that's the thing that's going to be like, oh, you know, I think it just means so much in terms of psychologically what it means to get to those exchanges, what it means in terms of the legality of things and how it opens it up. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's also something, the episode today that we released with Michael, he was talking about that, you know, he's from the parent company, and stocks like high quality US stocks that are still trading on senior Canadian exchanges, like they're still discounted for a reason, but they won't be for much longer. So, right. And I think when everybody starts, and I mean when everybody, like the mainstream financial media starts freaking out, it'll probably be how I feel now in terms of getting into the ETF MSOS, which is a little too late, and which is bad.
Hey, you're not alone on that, to be honest, because I am not in the ETF yet, but I'm waiting until I make my money back from the MJ ETF that I got in 2 years ago. So I'm waiting to just get that money, and then I'm going to put it into the MSO.
Yeah, I waited too long to get into Air Strategies. These are two of my like big like moments of myself. I should have gotten in last year, and I'm so mad. And that was where I put the last of my like funds into this. And so MSOS, I'm still waiting. I did just get my stimulus check, so you know, maybe.
I'm waiting on mine. I can't wait. I know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, you mentioned the parent company. I actually picked up a few shares today.
Nice.
Tell me, I know that's JayZ's like backed
Chief visionary officer.
Right, chief visionary. So tell us a little bit about the parent company and what all they're doing.
Well, they allowed me to use one of my favorite JayZ lines in a tweet. He's not a businessman, he's a businessman.
Man, yes,
classic. My daughter and I say to each other a lot. Yeah, I love it. I had Michael Orbeck on before they launched. And it was one of those conversations where I was like, oh yeah, this is, you know, sounds great. And everything just sounded like, basically the business plan is to consolidate and dominate, right? They're like a Behemoth California cannabis company at this point with JayZ's monogram. They have Kaliva, they have Left Coast Ventures, and a lot of other brands. And I think they're just sweeping up many of the great brands. And I think that will start extending to the East Coast as well once those states pick up legalization. And he did the same deal with Subversive and Canndoc, the Israeli intercure company. It's consolidating the big companies and becoming a big player, if not the biggest player. And they called it the parent company because they wanted to be the parent company of this cannabis sector, this cannabis industry. And they wanted to be like a generational company, you know, the first 100-year post-prohibition company. And then add into that the social equity component, which they're really digging their heels in. It's, you know, when you put JayZ as the chief visionary officer, I think you know that it's not going to be like sound bites and headlines.
Right.
And they have just like a lot of great people behind that, and a ton of funding. And again, not just funding, like putting money behind something, but bringing in first time, entrepreneurs, business owners, Black people, people of color that don't have, the financial background or the resources to kind of go out there and know how to apply for a loan, know how to fill out a license application, and just giving them resources and tools and grants and being able to kind of raise up the people that were not afforded the opportunity until now, and kind of righting those wrongs. So I think both from like the profit standpoint and then the purpose standpoint, two things that I like to focus on. It just like made a lot of sense. And then just looking deeper into it, I think the cash that they have and the types of opportunities that are available to them. And we had Chris DeMuth on speaking about SPACs, and he was saying what he looks for. And this is literally what he does, is he looks at SPACs. And he says what he looks for in a SPAC is the size, bigger ones are better than smaller ones. And anyone that has like a 1 or a 2 or a 3, people that have had different iterations of the SPACs. And that's what Subversive is doing. I think they're kind of hitting it out of the park. And I just see like I see a lot of promise. And then also tying that into Rock Nation and their list of artists and performers and athletes and the branding opportunities. It seems, right.
The network, right? I mean, I didn't even think about that, because I was focusing on the brand recognition, Kaliva. I think even Marley's, Bob
Marley's is part of that. Yeah,
Marley's brand. Yeah. So that in itself, plus the strong leadership and management team that they have, right? JayZ sitting at the helm, chief visionary officer. But then the network that JayZ has, of course, all the celebrity endorsements and all the sponsorship opportunities on that side. And, I'm excited, again, we don't know when federal legalization is coming. Texas obviously is dragging its feet, even on the medical side. But I can't wait to just start trying all these amazing California brands that you see on Instagram or you watch in TV and movies. It's like, it's going to be a pretty cool time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really exciting times, and I think it gets more exciting. I mean, I will tease an upcoming episode we have next week that has an exciting. It's kind of our first time releasing an episode around an announcement.
Is it JayZ?
Man, I wish. It's Beyonce, so like close second, but it's no big deal.
Are you serious?
No, it's not Beyonce.
I was like, what?
I am serious about timing an announcement. Boy, if I had Beyonce coming on the show, I would be getting myself ready starting today.
You sold that. I thought for sure you were serious. I was like, wow, Rena, you're stepping up in the podcast world here. Damn.
I hope one day that to be true. I felt like when I talked to Michael and I was asking him, so how was it to like meet JayZ? And I was like, I'm 1 degree away from JayZ. That was already like a big thrill for me. So hopefully we get closer and closer.
It'll happen.
Yeah. I have the moment where Jim Carrey wrote a check of $1 million to himself on the top of some hill in Hollywood in like the late 80s. Right.
You have that check locked up in your lockbox. I know you do.
Yeah, exactly. A thank you note from Beyonce for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, who is it then? Who's the guest?
Well, I can't say, Kevin.
You can't say.
I got to keep it close to the chest, but I will say that it's touching on the points that we've made here.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's a nice, exciting announcement.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I will. I'll share with you who I have coming up.
Do it.
1 second. I got to pull my list here. Hey, one other thing I want to talk about is our relationship with cannabis.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a thought of also talking about something like that. What did you want to talk about with that?
Just like why it's a part of our lifestyles, what benefits that we feel personally we get out of it, stories, I don't know, really anything.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's funny. It came up because we were, again, the episode that I released today, sorry, but I just listened to it. we were talking about, Israel and cannabis, and we were saying how Israelis love U.S. brands, and I was saying they also really love their cannabis, and so it's kind of like a nice marriage of those two things. And I was saying I think a lot of the reason why so many people in Israel love cannabis is because I think most of the society here has PTSD, and I think cannabis like really serves that and soothes that. And I would say for myself, I have a little PTSD from a couple different reasons, and I would say that that's one of the reasons why I like cannabis. Is I think, I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I think the people that it really just suits, and it really just feels like it suits me.
Yeah.
In a way that alcohol doesn't for me. I mean, I do drink from time to time, less so as I get older. But alcohol is like more like if I'm at a bar or if drinks are being served, but I don't like love it. And I just feel like the chemistry that I have with cannabis just really suits me. And I think I'm also, I consider myself a writer. I like to consider myself a poet. And I used to do spoken word poetry and hip hop and rapping. And that lends itself
Wow.
very obviously to that. So I think that was one of my first forays into cannabis was through music and the hip hop kind of community. And then the other thing that I was thinking that we share this with, because I know you are a wrestler, is I was a big basketball player and very big into sports. And I feel like as perhaps not matching up as it sounds like, maybe it sounds incongruous that athletes and sports and cannabis goes together, but I kind of do think it does. And I think we see that even not if you're talking about THC, but like CBD and all these partnerships coming, like I think there's something calming after working your body hard, after competing so hard, after being like driven intensely. I think there's something that like allows us to reflect and be calmer and yeah.
Absolutely.
That I think ties in nice with former and present athletes.
Right, right. Well, I didn't know that you had a hip hop songwriting poetry background. That's so cool.
I do, yeah. It's a little bit still a part of my present. I don't get to spit very often. I don't get to use it very often, but I still like to have it a part of myself.
Where is the content? Where can we find it? Are you published?
The content is old that's online. I mostly just did it live. I mean, I was never famous. I was more just like locally performed in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. Way back in the day in the New Eurekan Poets Cafe in New York a couple of times. But that's like way back in the day. More recently, just like I would say like 10, 15 years ago, I was performing in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And since then, just like writing and like performing at friends' parties and weddings and stuff like that, or on my rooftop.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hopefully one day I can hear it live.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you what you said, like the whole kind of relaxation and whatnot. My experience, like I was the guy in high school, and like you said, I wrestled since I was 5 years old, and it was like a big part of my family. My dad, his brothers wrestled; they were state champions. My cousins all wrestled, and it was like when I was in high school, I would go to parties, I remember, and like there would be guys that would like hide the weed because they thought that I'd be like judgmental, or like I was just very regiment oriented. Like I was an athlete, you know what I mean? And in wrestling,
Well,
you have
also
to.
wrestling is intense because you have to like weigh a certain amount and be like, it's more regimented. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You nailed it. Is the weight, the weight loss and the weight management. And so you can't really intake a lot of different things in your body just because you won't be able to compete. You won't make weight,
Mhm.
And I tried it for the first time. Shout out to my best friend and Luciano Romero, who he lives in Texas here now. We're still friends. He was in my wedding. And I just remember being like, wow, this is so like, when you're always on edge, you're in combat sports, you're pretty tense,
Right.
and I just felt so relieved. And so I did it a couple more times in high school. And then in college, I ended up retiring. I don't say quit. I retired from the sport of wrestling. And I remember that exact day when I left the office of the head coach to tell him I was in Pennsylvania. I went to the nearest head shop and I bought a really nice, like, triple blown glass pipe. And I was like, this is it. Like, I'm just gonna, be a student, full-time student, enjoy life, and do this. And I haven't stopped since. That's been, and that was in 2008. So
That's funny. So did
yeah.
you know that it was like something that you liked to that degree? Did you already know that then?
I had seen and had experience with some other drugs, and I knew that, like, cannabis wasn't anything that was extreme. Like, I knew that there was the psychoactive properties, but I saw more good that it did for me than bad. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, it wasn't like any other type of recreational drugs that you can get physically addictive to, or you could, they could cause harm to you or your family or whatever. I didn't see that. So I always just kind of saw it as a therapeutic. I didn't call it a therapeutic thing in college, of course, but like, as it's just progressed, I've seen it as more of a lifestyle choice because it helps me in my everyday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My next part of this, and something that I've been thinking about a lot and have tangentially talked to a couple of guests with, is how they talk about cannabis with their kids. Or if, like, you don't have kids yet, right? Or you don't
No,
have kids.
we have
And
3 dogs though. How do you talk? I can talk
you
to them about
you talk about
CBD.
it with them? Do they like bark when stuff is happening?
They CBD. We have conversations about that. But no, I'm joking.
Do they take CBD? Because I heard it's really good for dogs.
Not all the time, but one of our dogs is pretty on edge all the time, and we do once in a while when we have it. And I just need to find a really good, reliable brand. But it works for sure.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard good things. Yeah, so that's I want to break down how people talk to their kids, and it doesn't have to be their own kids. Even if, like, people smoke, and how do they talk about their niece and nephew or their friends' kids? Um, so I think it's like the next thing that we need to break down is like how we raise kids with that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. To your point earlier about how the lack of awareness and knowledge of the endocannabinoid system is present in the healthcare system, right? And more, I think, when we get federal legalization, of course, this is going to be inherent in our pharmaceutical industry, in our healthcare system. We're going to be using cannabis as a medicine, and it's important, you know what I mean, that those discussions are had with your children, because we're inherently biologically married to the plant, and there is a thing of as endocannabinoid deficiency. I truly believe that. I think that, I'm not saying it's a direct cause of a lot of the ailments that we're seeing today, but I think that having more cannabinoids in our system would definitely help,
And
however we consume it.
I was gonna say, yeah, and there's other ways of getting that into your system beyond THC. I mean, there's natural ways of, enhancing our endocannabinoid system. So yeah, even starting from that place, I think is a really great point, and just explaining what it even is and what our bodies need and why it helps. And yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know what is incredible to me, Rena, talking about like my experience podcasting. So, like when I first started this, I was really excited. I told my wife, I reminded her because it's been almost a year now, and so I said, "What's exciting about this is that we're just scratching the surface with how many cannabinoids we understand, but there's hundreds of them, right?" And so, like, I'll be able to talk about the different cannabinoids as we discover them and learn more about them, with guests that are researching this stuff. And it's happened so quickly that literally this episode hasn't published yet, but I talked to Dr. Jonathan Vaught, CEO of Front Range Biosciences, and they just unveiled their new THCV product line.
Mm.
And it's a rare cannabinoid. Like, there's not a lot of quantity in it, in the plant. Like, it's really hard to extract because there's just such a small amount of it in the plant. But the effects, the anecdotal events, of course, right, we don't know this for sure, but is that they're saying it can serve as like an appetite suppressant. In some cases it helps Alzheimer's patients. Like, it's incredible, like,
It's incredible.
yeah. So
It's incredible.
my point is that, like, I said that a year ago, thinking that, okay, 2-3 years from now we're going to start to have these conversations, but it's already happening. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like,
right, right, right.
it's happening so fast. It's incredible.
It's funny. There's like a lot of like long, short. There's like the term like the long, short way and the short, long way. And I feel like there's all these things that we keep feeling like legalization, like safe banking, like it's coming, but it seems like much more protracted process. And then it's like profitable companies. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, there's five, like when is a company going to be like real and announcing real financials? And they're like, it's crazy, like how fast some things happen in the industry. And then others, it seems like it takes a long time, but then it's like somebody explained it, the point between 99 and 100 is going to happen like that.
Right, exactly. And we're caught in that warp speed right now. Remember we talked about that window? I feel like we're in that window right now of it just completely starting to just shoot off and take off.
I agree. And we're in it, man. We're in it.
We're riding through it. It's been great, man. Yeah. And it's been such a pleasure to talk with you and build a relationship with you in this capacity, Rena, because like we're doing the same thing, right? I mean, we're trying to educate from different viewpoints, of course, and whatnot, but it's really just great to share it with you.
I agree. And it's fun listening to your podcast and like seeing what you bring. Cause as you said, like you bring a slightly different angle and it's different things that I don't get to talk about. And it's fun hearing about as kind of an insider, but as an outsider in terms of like certain things that you guys are talking about. And it's fun to learn more about the plan and activism from you. So, and it's always fun to talk to you. So I thank you for initiating that. And I'm very happy to continue to be a part of that. So I thank you as well.
Awesome. No, and I feel the same way. I love your podcast. I tell anyone, like I have friends that we have a group chat and we're talking about different stocks and just, investment opportunities. And anytime that, cannabis is in the discussion, I'm always, sending them an episode that's related or whatever, because the content that you're producing is great. It's very helpful,
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And I think one of our biggest fans might be my mom. She's in love with these episodes. Because you and Kevin, you're just adorable together.
I told my same thing to my wife. I'm like, I get to talk to Rena tomorrow. And she's like, oh, awesome. Because she listens to him also. She can see that we have a great chemistry,
Yay.
So, yeah.
It's a thrill and an honor. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Of course. Before we wrap up, Rena, what do you want to leave the audience with? It'll probably be a month from now until we talk again. So
yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what I'll leave. Last time you asked me as I was leaving about Global Cannabis. I'm going to get their name wrong again.
Oh, yeah.
Global Cannabis Application Corp. Wait, I'm just going to.
Global Cannabis Applications Corp. Their ticker is FUAPF. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. So I had talked to Brad Moore like way back in 2019. And you had said that, and they were an AI company and with kind of trying exactly what you're saying really about kind of figuring out these new ways of figuring out medicinal ways of healing through cannabis. So they had the medicinal part of cannabis and trying to figure out in terms of, sharing data, patients sharing data, ways of improving prescription, cannabis medicine, just kind of like all those ways that blockchain can help in the process, implementing them in many different ways. And also in Europe and in Israel and kind of extending the borders. And I don't know if this is why you brought them up, but a couple people had brought them up to me right before you did. And they had been a little bit off my radar, but the stock is like up like 600% or something. I mean, it's a penny stock, so it's not, right. It's like up like 1 cent or 2 cents. I think it's in the 20s maybe now.
It's trading at 18 cents right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that why you knew about it? Because it's had this kind of like explosive growth this year?
I'll tell you, my strategy when I first started investing, and it was centered on the industry of cannabis. This was in 2018. I went like a lot of people did to the Canadian LPs. And I kind of just started looking at companies within each vertical, like ancillary companies, plant touching companies, all that. And when it came to the technology sector, I just kind of read some interesting articles about them. It sounded like they were focused on blockchain, which I knew was like, in emerging technology and whatnot. And so that was really, it was just kind of basic research that I did. And again, like you said, it was a penny stock. So I think I threw just, $100 at it or something like that. It wasn't a lot, but yeah, like you said, I've just kind of seen it to continue to grow. It's pretty incredible. I don't
So
know.
you're still in it.
I'm in it. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. I'm sticking with it. I mean, why not, see what happens. So
It's interesting about these kind of penny stocks because I would say in general, penny stocks scare me. And like working at Seeking Alpha for 12 years, we're taught to fear penny stocks for the most part. But I think in the cannabis world, it's a little bit different because like the valuation has been applied differently. So yeah, it's interesting. So, some of those stocks are starting to really like creep up.
Right.
Vireo Health being one of them. I mean, I like them from the beginning and they're really starting to make a move. It's interesting to see how far a move some of these companies are going to be able to make. I'm very interested. I feel like there's like a few tiers, I actually want to start writing about this a little bit. In terms of like the big players, right? Like the True Leaves and the Cure Leaves and the Crescos and the Green Thumbs. And then there's like the next tier, maybe TerraSend,
Harvest Health.
Harvest Health. And then there's kind of one below that. And I'm very interested to see who makes it and who keeps maybe raises themselves to the next level even.
That would be very interesting to follow. And you could do a lot of like visual content that represents that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like the levels and like that's a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it might be out of reach for some people, you know what I mean? Like you said, the True Leaves that are trading at like $50 now, and whatnot. But these other players like Harvest Health is at $4 right now,
Yeah.
and they're going to be a major Arizona player. So
I agree. It's like different, shopping levels. It's like Banana Republic, J. Crew, Zara, whatever, like Gucci, Barney's.
right.
Yeah. It's different tiered pricing. Yeah. But
What
but there's value to be had.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the tide is rising, right? No matter what's going to happen, there's going to be big players, going to be mid-sized players, and then there's going to be your mom and pops,
Right.
I want to ask you, what do you know about Verano?
Yes, very exciting. Very exciting. I think people are really, really excited about this with really good reason. They just have huge resources, specifically in Illinois. Great capitalization, great funding, great people that are involved with them, that are backing them. Sol Global is one of the main shareholders there. I've been following it. There's a great author on Seeking Alpha that covers Sol Global. And that was the first way into Verano because they weren't being publicly traded. And now they are about to be, if not already since we started talking. Yeah, it's exciting. I think there's a real cause for excitement there.
I didn't realize. Okay, so they're an Illinois player because they just hit my radar. Like I've been seeing tweets about it and stuff, and I believe today is the day they were supposed to start trading. And when the markets opened this morning, I looked to see if they're available, and they're not. Like so,
I was reading. There's some issues with some providers that aren't. There's some issue there. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I've talked to like 2 companies in the past couple of weeks that have had these like ticker issues in terms of like coming to market and either switching tickers or coming to market with a new ticker. And there's just like technical issues around it. And not all brokerages will service them. And I think there's a lot of just technical issues, but I think once it hits, it's a nice stock to own. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely putting that on my watch list then.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, let's do this then. Okay. Last thing.
Okay.
Crystal ball moment. Okay. We got 1 month until we talk again. We've seen how much has changed since we last talked. So let's just do kind of 1 month projections and predictions. And then when we come back, we'll kind of recap them and see how off we were, or if we were even close.
Okay, that's good. How are we gauging these projections? Like what are we in general, certain stocks? What are we, what
I wasn't speaking, we can do spot stocks, but I was thinking more general, like just the industry. We talked earlier about Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, talking about getting that bill ready. So like, what does that bill look like? What gets passed, all that kind of stuff, whatever predictions.
Look, here's the thing. I'm not sure how that looks, because they said that even with the majority, it might be hard to pass like all the different moving parts of that bill. And I think that that's right. It seems to me that the first things that are going to open up are the financial things, because like the 280E issue, the banking, the further access to banking, it seems like those two are such onerous, anvils on these companies' necks, and it's so utterly ridiculous and absurd. It seems to me like that's the first path. And what gets folded into that and what else is a part of that, I honestly I don't know, and I don't even want to make the prediction, but I feel like that's going to be the first way in, I think, is the financial aspect of it. And that will allow companies to, look, Trulieve is already doing this. They're already preparing, their statements are already ready to be uplisted to the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So it's already happening, and I think that's going to be the next step. Is that going to happen when we talk in a month? Probably not, but it could be that language is already being formed, and it's already in place. When does it get further into place? Maybe in the next couple of months. I certainly think in the next month we'll have a better idea of what the law passing looks like. But yeah, I would say that's where the focus starts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's fair to say. Like, obviously nothing happens overnight, and these bills are going to be presented, then there's going to be pushback, then there's going to be, editing and change to the language, and then it'll be up for a vote. And so it'll take time, but I think you're right that at the end of the month, we'll have a better understanding of what legislation will be on the table.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of focus on what, when, and I think the what, when, we don't know. Literally nobody knows the what, when. But I think we have the how, which is how this is all going to keep churning and moving in this kind of green direction. And I think the how is there. The what and when are variables that you can plug and play the more we know. But I think the thesis remains the same. So I would say, look at strong management, US players. I would focus on that. If you really want to focus on Canada, you can. There's still some nice companies there, probably the smaller ones, maybe Afria. The smaller ones, Afria. But I think the main thesis is there. So if you want to invest according to that, the thesis is there to be invested alongside.
Right. Yep. No, well said. And hopefully at the end of the month or a month from now, we'll start seeing CNBC and Bloomberg start talking about MSOs more also,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And not just us. Once we hit mainstream, that's when, there might not be any growth ahead.
That's when the floodgates open.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Rena, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Keep killing it on the investing side of the cannabis podcasts. And look forward to talking to you in 30 days.
Likewise, Kevin, always a pleasure, and keep killing it yourself, and we'll talk to you soon. I really enjoyed this as always.
Awesome. And thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening.